We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. Tensions soar in West Asia as Israel army chief tells soldiers to prepare for a possible ground offensive in Lebanon. France proposes 21-day ceasefire. US says risk of escalation acute. Indian embassy in Beirut urges nationals to leave Lebanon as soon as possible. Russian President Putin proposes broader criteria for using nuclear weapons, says Russia will consider nuclear weapons in the event of massive air attack. Thousands evacuated in Florida as the U.S. state braces for Hurricane Helen, expected to hit as Category 4 on Thursday evening local time. Retreating monsoon halts Mumbai in its tracks. Heavy rain's prediction for today triggers closure of schools and colleges. Citizens asked to step out only when necessary. India's Prime Minister Modi to inaugurate and lay the foundation stone of projects worth over 22,600 crore rupees in Pune today. Will also dedicate to the nation 3 indigenously developed computers. And in sports, Real Madrid's Helen Mbape suffers muscle injury, doubtful for Sunday's away derby against Atletico Madrid. Well, on to the top story. This hour, Israel's armed chief said that airstrikes in Lebanon would continue in order to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure and to prepare the way for a possible ground operation by Israeli forces. The Israeli military said a Hezbollah missile intercepted near Israel's economic center, Tel Aviv, is the first fired by the militant group to reach close to the city. Hezbollah said it had targeted the headquarters of Israel's intelligence service, Mossad. Meanwhile, Israel widened its airstrikes in Lebanon. Israeli airstrikes this week have targeted Hezbollah leaders and hit hundreds of sites deep inside Lebanon, where hundreds of thousands have fled the border region. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday repeated a vow to return the tens of thousands of Israelis evacuated from northern border areas to their homes and said the Hezbollah was being hit harder than it could imagine.
I can't go into detail about everything we do, but I can tell you one thing. We are determined to return our residents in the north safely to their homes. We are inflicting blows on Hezbollah that they did not imagine. We do it with power. We do it with guile. I promise you one thing. We will not rest until they come home.
Well, France on Wednesday unveiled a proposal for a 21-day ceasefire in Lebanon in a UN diplomatic push with the United States to allow for negotiations in the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah on Wednesday. Shortly after talks at the United Nations between Presidents Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron, France outlined the proposal at an Emergency Security Council session. Deputy U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, told the Council that the U.S. was working with other countries to avert an escalation of hostilities, enable displaced people in Lebanon and Israel to return home and allow for discussions on a broader diplomatic solution. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that the two Western powers were proposing a temporary ceasefire of 21 days to allow for negotiations. He said it is urgent that all actors engage resolutely on a path of de-escalation. Barrot is due to travel to Lebanon this week. Meanwhile, as the United States and France are trying to hammer out an interim accord to halt hostilities between Israel and the Lebanese Hezbollah, Cyprus President Nikos Christodoulidis on Wednesday met Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. He spoke to French and Israeli leaders as well.
During the last days, there are a lot of deliberations that we're trying to avoid further escalation, especially with Lebanon. I was in the phone with Prime Minister Netanyahu on Saturday, Prime Minister Mikati. Last night I had a meeting with Prime Minister Macron, and there is a diplomatic, I would say, initiative, especially from the United States and France, in order to avoid further escalation.
Well, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres also voiced concern over escalation in Lebanon at the United Nations Security Council. He said all-out war must be avoided at all cost.
Madam President, Excellencies, hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. As I told the General Assembly yesterday, we should all be alarmed by the escalation. Lebanon is at the brink.
And for more, we have Amit Mukherjee joining us on this. Well, Amit, good morning. Israel's army, if we talk about Israel's army chief, says the military is preparing for a possible ground incursion into Lebanon. On the other hand, France and the US are working for a 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. Where do you see this going?
Well, Pakshi, the situation right now is very, very alarming. And the words which actually echoed at the United Nations Security Council were ceasefire, diplomacy, de-escalation, and peace. You know, while all the countries, all the nations which are participating in the 79th UN meet and are currently in the US right now in New York, they have been asking for de-escalation except for two countries, that's Iran and Israel. Israel, of course, is very, very determined right now. They want to dissipate. They want to dismantle every machinery of the Hezbollah that is being utilized from the Lebanese territory to kind of launch attack every now and then on the Israeli civilians, on the Israeli territory, which is why Israel has made it amply clear that they're going to go all out. The time for half-baked measures are over. They're going to penetrate deep into the Lebanese territory where Hezbollah has set up all their camps and all. They want to dismantle it once and forever so that the people who have been displaced in Israel, in the northern part of Israel, because of the ongoing attack by Hezbollah, they are able to, those residents can move back into their territories, and there is a long-term peace out there. They said earlier Israel has been focusing on just kind of, defending itself at the borders, the northern border of Israel, but now they have penetrated deep into the Lebanese territory. They are conducting regular air raids and kind of attacking all possible sites which the Mossad has identified using its intelligence in the Lebanese territory, which actually belong to the Hezbollah. Yeah.
Also, if you talk about Iran, it says it would not remain indifferent in a full-scale war in Lebanon and will stand with it. What about the statement?
Well, like I said, two countries, one is Israel and the other is Iran. Although Iran is not directly involved at this point in time, but it's a known fact that it has been backing Hezbollah at every stage. Ever since this Hamas and Israel war broke out, the conflict broke out on the 7th of October, Hezbollah has been constantly firing rockets and volleys of rockets into northern Israeli territories. So it was kind of doubling up on one end, along with Hamas as far as the attack on Israel is concerned. And Iran now, it has a couple of days back, the Iranian president Pezeshkian, he had very clearly said that the world is watching, and if Israel is not stopped at this point in time collectively, it will turn the Lebanon territories will turn into another Gaza. Also, Iran made it very, very clear that if Israel goes on attacking territories in Lebanon, then it will not be a mute spectator. I mean, it will not be indifferent to the attacks of Israel, and they're going to go all out. So it is very, very clear that Iran so far, which has not been directly involved, might, in days to come, might be a part of active participant in the whole issue. Now, the only thing is that while everybody is talking about peace, one has to identify what is the voice that Hezbollah is going to listen to. As far as Israel is concerned, it is in constant touch with all the Western powers, and it is still open to a ceasefire deal, provided the constant assault on its territory by Hezbollah stops at this point in time.
Right. Amit, if we talk about now our most important thing, what about Gaza? As it's being said that there is currently no political will on either side, is Hamas or Israel, to end the conflict.
Well, Lipakshi, at this point in time, since the entire focus has shifted to Lebanon, in the wake of these airstrikes which Israel is conducting on the Lebanese territories, specifically on the Hezbollah targets, the focus has kind of shifted from Gaza. But having said that, I would like to go on record that Israel is continuously conducting its operations. As far as the Gaza territories are concerned, in the northern part of Gaza also, Israel has got some plans, military plans, and they are kind of going ahead with those plans. And even as far as Lebanon is concerned, Israel at this point in time, which is only conducting air raids and strikes using aerial sort of weapons, are preparing to get into the Lebanese territory. In fact, it has requisitioned 2 more brigades to kind of execute the kind of assault they are planning by going into the Lebanese territory. Lipakshi?
Right, Amit. Also, if you talk about the UN chief, he's warned all sides to step back from the brink on Lebanon and said all-out war must be avoided at all costs. Do you see any of this working?
Well, Anthony Guterres has been constantly saying that this would lead to a humanitarian catastrophe if this escalation doesn't happen at this point in time. Otherwise, you know, if all the sides do not act with immediate effect, kind of a catastrophe, humanitarian catastrophe similar to Gaza is inevitable. However, France has been kind of harping on a 21-day ceasefire at this point in time. We'll have to see how that works out. Again, I would like to ascertain the fact that one has to figure out what is the voice that Hezbollah authorities, Hezbollah chief or the commanders would listen to, because unless and until they are brought to the table, they stop the firing of those rockets. In fact, 9,000 rockets they have fired into Israeli territories. Hezbollah, since the whole Hamas and Israel conflict had started since October 7th, they have fired about 9,000 rockets into the Israeli territory. So one has to figure out, despite the UN call for a peace, for ceasefire, it doesn't really seem a reality in the near future. So one really has to figure out how to bring these two sides, and Iran would definitely play a major role in the de-escalation, if at all that happens.
All right, the framework behind the possible ceasefire deal is very important. Right, Amit, thank you so much for all those details from there. And moving on, meanwhile, Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon said his country is open to a diplomatic solution on Lebanon, but vows to use all means in its goal of degrading Iranian-backed militia Hezbollah.
Our position regarding Lebanon has always been very clear. We would prefer a diplomatic solution. We are entirely focused on achieving our objectives, which in the north is the return of our displaced citizens who have become refugees in their own country, back to their homes, back to their schools, back to their families. Do not mistake a peaceful nation for a defenseless one. We have the means, we have the capabilities to achieve this goal. If diplomacy fails to return our residents to their homes, then we will use all means at our disposal in accordance with international law to achieve our aims.
Well, before the council meeting, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said his country supported Hezbollah and would not remain indifferent if the conflict in Lebanon spiraled.
Hezbollah decides for itself, and it is completely able to defend itself and to defend Lebanon and Lebanese people. We have always said that we support Hezbollah in its just cause to defend Lebanon and its people against the atrocities of Israel and against its occupation. Hezbollah has done nothing to violate the resolution. The resolution prevents any manifestation of military presence, which has not happened by Israel.
Well, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also called for diplomacy and an immediate ceasefire to bring Israel and Hezbollah back from the brink at a UN Security Council meeting.
I call on the Security Council to seek political solutions that can break repeated cycles of violence like that in the Middle East. The region is on the brink. We need an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Lebanese Hezbollah and the implementation of a political plan. which allows Israeli and Lebanese civilians to return to their homes to live in peace and security. That security will come through diplomacy, not escalation.
Meanwhile, Australia has urged around 15,000 of its citizens living in Lebanon to leave, flagging a risk that Beirut airport may close and the difficulty of evacuating large numbers if the situation worsens. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said his government had made contingency plans that could include evacuations by the sea.
We continue to call for de-escalation. We have been saying for months that people needed to leave, and people do need to leave, and we can't be clearer than that. And we also want there to be restraint here. We want to see a de-escalation in the region. We want to see a ceasefire both in Gaza and when it comes to Lebanon. We want to see a de-escalation there.
Well, the Indian embassy in Beirut has asked the Indians living in Lebanon to leave the country as soon as possible and further advised the people to exercise extreme caution and stay in touch with the embassy, who have to remain here amid the escalating situation. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Trump implicates Iran in his assassination attempts after being briefed by intelligence officials. Another incident of vandalism of Hindu temple reported in U.S. California after a similar act took place at the Babs Mandir in New York. And we'll tell you about the world's first 3D printed hotel where technology and the hospitality industry are converging in a West Texas desert.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. And moving on, Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday warned that Russia could resort to nuclear weapons if it has faced any form of attack, declaring that even a conventional strike supported by nuclear power would be treated as a joint assault. Addressing top officials at a Security Council meeting, Putin revealed proposed changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine, emphasizing a critical shift. He stressed that Russia now reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in defense, not only of itself, but also of Belarus, even if attacked with conventional arms. Putin framed these revisions as a calculated response to the evolving military threats confronting Russia, signaling a stark escalation in the country's defense posture amidst rising global tensions.
The updated version of the document proposes that aggression against Russia by a non-nuclear weapon state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear weapon state, should be regarded as a joint attack on the Russian Federation. The conditions for Russia's transition to the use of nuclear weapons are also clearly defined. We will consider such a possibility as soon as we receive reliable information about a massive launch of aerospace attack means and their crossing of our state border, meaning strategic or tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, drones, hypersonic missiles, and other aircraft.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House today. The meeting, held amid intensifying global focus on Ukraine, comes as Zelensky prepares to unveil his ambitious plan for victory in Ukraine's war against Russia. It's a critical moment as the world watches and Ukraine faces mounting pressure on the battlefield. Here's a report. U.S. President Joe Biden has promised swift action to accelerate support for Ukraine. Biden was addressing world leaders, including Zelensky, on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly when he reaffirmed his administration's unwavering commitment to Kyiv.
We're committed to providing Ukraine with the resources it needs to build back stronger than it was before. You're not alone in this fight.
But Zelensky's visit isn't just about promises, it's about delivering on them. Zelensky is pushing hard for Western nations, especially the US, to double down on their support. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a fresh $375 million in military aid to Ukraine, including HIMARS rocket launchers, Javelin missiles, and light tactical vehicles. The Biden administration is also expected to notify Congress of plans for an additional $5.5 billion in military aid to be deployed over the coming months. The Ukrainian president is not only advocating for immediate military aid, but also laying out a vision for Ukraine's future, one that he believes could turn the tide of the war. At the UN earlier this week, Zelensky called for a just peace and urged global leaders to back his proposal to bring the conflict to an end. He insists that action, not just talks, is needed.
This war can't be calmed by talks. Action is needed.
But what exactly is Zelensky's victory plan? Though the details remain under wraps, sources say it's designed as a bridge to stop the war, with the ultimate goal of forcing Russia to the negotiating table. Harshita Oberoi, DD India. And moving on, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump on Wednesday said Iran may have been behind recent attempts to assassinate him. Trump's remarks came after U.S. intelligence officials briefed him on real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him.
As you know, there have been 2 assassination attempts on my life that we know of, and they may or may not involve, but possibly do, Iran. But we've been threatened very directly by Iran. And I think you have to let them know, because the best way to do it is through the office of the president, that you do any attacks on former presidents or candidates for president, your country gets blown to smithereens, as we say.
And on the other hand, U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris said that she would offer tax credits to domestic manufacturers and invest in sectors that will define the next century, as she detailed her economic plan to boost the U.S. middle class at the Economic Club of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania.
I have pledged that building a strong middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. The third pillar of our opportunity economy is leading the world in the industries of the future and making sure America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century. So I will recommit the nation to global leadership in the sectors that will define the next century. We will invest in biomanufacturing and aerospace, remain dominant in AI and quantum computing, blockchain and other emerging technologies, expand our lead in clean energy innovation and manufacturing.
Well, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said on Wednesday that the Mexican president-elect's decision to exclude King Philip VI from the guest list of a swearing-in ceremony was absolutely unacceptable. Mexico's president-elect Claudia Sheinbaum posted a statement on her X account announcing she had decided to invite only the Spanish Prime Minister to her inauguration. In response, the Spanish government said that exclusion of the king was unacceptable, and as a result, none of its members would attend Sheinbaum's inauguration.
The Spanish government considers Mexico a brotherly country. Spain and Mexico are brotherly countries, and therefore, we think it's absolutely unacceptable that the presence of our head of state is excluded. A head of the state who, by the way, has participated in all the inaugurations.
Well, Taiwan on Thursday said that 43 Chinese aircraft and 8 naval vessels were detected around the democratic island within a 24-hour period. China, which claims democratic Taiwan as part of its territory, sends warplanes, drones and naval vessels around the island nearly every day. The latest incursions came as Japanese media reported that a Japanese warship sailed through the sensitive Taiwan Strait for the first time to assert its freedom of navigation. There was no immediate confirmation from Tokyo of the passage, which media reports said took place on Wednesday following similar journeys by US and European navies in the recent years. And Sri Lanka's newly elected President Anurakumara Dissanayake announced plans to immediately begin talks with the International Monetary Fund to advance the country's $2.9 billion bailout program. Dissanayake, who was elected just a couple of days ago, laid stress on the need to move quickly in renegotiating the terms of the IMF bailout and advancing debt restructuring efforts. Dissanayake added that he aims to conclude a deal to restructure the country's international sovereign bonds and secure additional concessions for the struggling economy. The IMF, which provided a financial lifeline to Sri Lanka during its 2022 economic collapse, expressed readiness to resume discussions with the new government. And moving on, another incident of vandalism of Hindu temple reported in U.S. California on Wednesday. The Bab's Sri Swaminarayan Mandir in the Sacramento area of California was desecrated with hateful messages. A peace prayer calling for peace and unity was held at the temple premises. Sacramento County Mayor and officials attended the prayer meet. According to the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, sheriff deputies responded to the Bab's Sri Swaminarayan Mandir in Mather, where the graffiti was discovered. Deputies all said that vandals also cut water lines at the property. Earlier, a similar incident of vandalism took place at the Bab's Swaminarayan Temple in New York on September 17, 2024. And New York Mayor Eric Adams was indicted on federal criminal charges following multiple probes into alleged corruption. The exact charges in the sealed indictment were not yet clear. Adams is now the first sitting New York mayor to face such charges. It was not immediately clear whether Adams would be arrested or voluntarily surrender. The charges are likely to be unsealed on Thursday when Adams may appear in court. The FBI on November 6th searched the electronic devices of Mayor Adams as part of an investigation into what the New York Times reported was the possible acceptance by his 2021 campaign of illegal donations, including by the Turkish government. The investigators also sought information about donations from Bay Atlantic University, a Washington, D.C. college whose founder is Turkish. And U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, announced that the United States will give a further $424 million in humanitarian help to the people of Sudan. The announcement takes total U.S. funding since the war began to $2 billion. The U.S. ambassador said more than 25 million Sudanese face acute hunger. Many are in famine and some 11 million have fled their homes in what has become the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet. War erupted in mid-April last year from a power struggle between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces ahead of a planned transition to the civilian rule. Moving on, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government on Wednesday survived a no-confidence vote initiated by the opposition Conservative Party. The vote ended with 211 lawmakers opposing the motion and 120 supporting it. This vote came shortly after the New Democratic Party unexpectedly pulled out of a 2022 deal that had been helping keep Trudeau's government stable. With the NDP no longer backing the Liberals, the government faced a higher risk of falling to a no-confidence motion. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre brought a no-confidence motion, seizing the opportunity after the New Democratic Party ended its collaboration with the Liberals. During a parliamentary debate, Poilievre criticized Trudeau for failing to address major issues like inflation, housing shortages and rising crime rates. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. World's first 3D printed hotel is taking shape in Texas. An industrial-sized 3D printer is extruding layer after layer of a concrete mixture to form the walls of the hotel's first 2 model units. It is building 43 new hotel units and 18 residential homes over 40 acres with a 3D printer. The owner said the technology allows for unbridled creativity in construction. The Desert Song Festival in Central Australia has concluded its final performance after 11 years of drawing global visitors to the Red Centre. Organisers cite funding constraints and rising costs as reasons for the festival's end, but express hope that its legacy will endure and continue to inspire. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's President Draupadi Murmu to visit Siachen Base Camp in Ladakh today. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held several bilaterals on the sidelines of the 79th United Nations General Assembly in New York. The second phase of J&K Assembly polls records turnout of over 57%.
Global warming and climate change are political and ethical issues. They're issues of rights, of equality, and of justice. Let's take a look at some of these questions that surround the idea of climate justice.
We have to move to green energy, which is solar and wind and all others. And therefore, we cannot have such a large area for conservation of the GIB.
Art doesn't sort of hit you on the head and sort of make you feel defensive. It proposes, and then the viewer can take away an idea, a thought, and hopefully act on it to make a bit of a difference.
They had a show called Shubh Kaal, and it was one of their oldest radio programs. So I used that show as my platform and started to work on creating content around climate change for this particular show.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Tensions soar in West Asia as Israel army chief tells soldiers to prepare for a possible ground offensive in Lebanon. France proposes 21-day ceasefire. US says risk of escalation acute. Indian embassy in Beirut urges nationals to leave Lebanon as soon as possible. Russian President Putin proposes broader criteria for using nuclear weapons, says Russia will consider nuclear weapons in event of massive air attack. Thousands evacuated in Florida as the U.S. state braces for Hurricane Helen, expected to hit as Category 4 on Thursday evening local time. Retreating monsoon halts Mumbai in its tracks. Heavy rains prediction for today triggers closure of schools and colleges. Citizens asked to step out only when necessary. And Real Madrid's Kylian Mbape suffers muscle injury, doubtful for Sunday's away derby against Atletico Madrid. And moving on, an increasingly powerful hurricane threatening catastrophic dangerous storm surges, and flooding was forecast to smash into Florida's Gulf Coast on Thursday as thousands of residents evacuated towns along the U.S. state's shoreline. Weatherman has worrying news for Florida residents. Hurricane Helen is strengthening and could hit Florida's Gulf Coast on Thursday as a Category 4 storm, producing catastrophic winds of up to 156 miles per hour. Helen entered the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday and was expected to pick up strength from the Gulf's warm waters before making an expected landfall in Florida's Panhandle on Thursday evening. More than 40 million people in Florida, Georgia and Alabama were under hurricane and tropical storm warnings, signaling a likelihood of life-threatening inundation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis expanded state of emergency to nearly all of Florida's 67 counties.
Of course, began preparing over the weekend. On Monday, I signed an executive order. We now have 61 of Florida's 67 counties that are in a state of emergency, and it's been able to help surge resources and help with preparations there.
Numerous evacuations are being ordered along Florida's Gulf Coast, and dozens of counties have announced school closures. Many residents are preparing for possible heavy flooding, while Georgia have also declared emergencies ahead of the storm and said that Helen will have a significant impact on Georgia.
I don't want to put fear in some folks' voice. We're all concerned about the impacts, but there's the potential of even mudslides that the National Hurricane Center has been discussing in our mountainous areas, just because the ground is going to be so saturated.
The White House has assured all assistance to Florida and other states in the path of the storm. Earlier, Hurricane Helen flooded Cancun, bringing ferocious winds and heavy rain. Also, Hurricane John fell apart as quickly as it formed but left destruction along Mexico's southern Pacific coast. John first made landfall at major hurricane strength, triggering flooding and landslides that crushed homes while leaving at least 5 dead. A meteorologist of Civil Protection predicted a fresh round of intense rainfall through Friday. The Miami-based Hurricane Center flagged the possibility that John could again become a hurricane before it strikes the coast. The center warned of likely catastrophic flash flooding and mudslides across 4 states along Mexico's Pacific coast. And firefighters battled 5 blazes on the outskirts of Ecuador's capital, Quito. Some 2,000 firefighters, military personnel and rescue workers have been deployed in Quito to try to contain the blazes and bring residents in affected areas to safety. So far, at least 6 people have been injured, including 2 children and 2 firefighters, and around 100 families evacuated from their homes. The emergency led President Daniel Noboa to cancel his speech at the UN General Assembly and return home from New York on Tuesday. The Minister of Environment confirmed the cause of the wildfire was an arson. And moving on, Indian Meteorological Department on Wednesday issued a red alert warning for Mumbai, Maharashtra till Thursday morning. In wake of the red alert issued by the Met Department, schools and colleges will remain closed, as well as severe water logging and traffic snarls were witnessed in several parts of the city, with a landslide also reported at the Mumbai bypass, causing further disruptions to movements in the city. Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation are constantly reviewing the situation and has advised people of the city to only step out of their homes if required. And for more on the situation in Mumbai, we have Shama Mishra joining us. Well, Shama, the IMD has issued a red alert for Mumbai and its adjoining districts for today. What's the situation right now as the downpour completely gridlocks Mumbai there?
Well, Lepakshi, if we are talking about yesterday's scene, it was really horrifying and concerning because it immediately and in a very short span rained, downpoured heavily, and which has caused a lot of traffic snarls, waterlogging in low-lying areas, and also it affected the western and the central railway traffic. But as and when the intensity of the rain started slowing down, everything started coming back on track. And if we are talking about today's situation, there are no traffic snarls incidents, there are no waterlogging incidents. Also, the central railway, the western railway, harbour railway, everything is back on track. So we can say Mumbai is back on track. However, yesterday itself, the Brihan Mumbai had announced that there will be holidays for schools and colleges in and around, and also the Thane Municipal Corporation had also later on announced that there will be schools and colleges holiday for them as well. So we are understanding this is to minimize the damage
that could have been caused. And like you were mentioning, that till today morning 8:30, it was red alert given to Mumbai and adjoining areas. But today now we are seeing the latest that we are getting it from the IMD department, that Mumbai, Thane, these areas, adjoining areas are on orange alert, that is 1 notch down. However, Palghar, Nashik, they continue to be on red alert.
All right, Shama. Also, could you tell us about the situation of the flights?
Well, the situation of the flights, it gets affected only once where the visibility gets affected. Now we are talking about today, so the rains are, very much in control. And as it was mentioned that in the morning it will be high tide, but the rains have stopped, and in between it's drizzling. So the intensity, or we could say the effect on the signals or these kind of visibility is very less right now. So a lot of traffic or everything has been really smooth. So we could say in today's update, if we are talking about, the flight situation is not affected that much. However, there are delays because of the traffic that we were seeing yesterday, and because of the flight situation yesterday, there have been some effect. But majorly, we could say everything is back on track.
Right. The situation is coming back to normal. Thank you so much, Shama, for all those details. And moving on, President of India Draupadi Murmu will visit Siachen base camp in North India's Ladakh on Thursday. The President will interact with the troops posted at the Siachen base camp. President Murmu will be the country's third president to visit Siachen, the world's highest battlefield. Former Presidents APJ Abdul Kalam and Ramnath Kovind also visited the Siachen base camp. Well, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Wednesday on the sidelines of the 79th United Nations General Assembly in New York. During the meeting, both the leaders discussed bilateral cooperation on regional issues. Dr. Jaishankar also held a meeting with the Belgian Prime Minister and discussed manufacturing and technology cooperation, as well as exchanging their views on the situation in Ukraine amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict. India's EAM also held talks with Greek Foreign Minister Georgios Gergapetritis and discussed an array of topics, including shipping, energy, mobility, connectivity and defence. Dr. Jaishankar also met UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy and held talks with him on strengthening the India-UK comprehensive strategic partnership. Dr. Jaishankar also met several delegates and diplomats on the sidelines of UNGA, including foreign ministers of Kazakhstan, Morocco, Australia, New Zealand and Swiss Federal Councillor, among many others. Also, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar signed the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement on Wednesday at the UN headquarters. Dr. Jaishankar, in a social media post, said, and I quote, "India is proud to join the BBNJ agreement, an important step towards ensuring that our oceans remain healthy and resilient." The agreement under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, or the BBNJ agreement, was adopted on 19 June 2023 by the Intergovernmental Conference on Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, convened under the auspices of the United Nations. The BBNJ agreement becomes the third implementing agreement to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And the second phase of J&K Assembly polls recorded turnout of 57.03% till 11:45 p.m. yesterday. Polling was conducted across 6 districts of Budgam, Ganderbal, Poonch and Jammu regions of Rajouri, Riyasi and Srinagar, with 25.78 lakh electorals eligible to cast votes to decide fate of 239 candidates in the second phase. A delegation of diplomats from 15 foreign nations visited different parts of Kashmir to get a taste of India's free and fair democracy in action, invited by India's Ministry of External Affairs. The delegation represented the US, Mexico, Guyana, South Korea, Somalia, Panama, Singapore, Nigeria, Spain, South Africa, Norway, Tanzania, Rwanda, Algeria and the Philippines. J&K Assembly elections are taking place after 10 years and for the first time after abrogation of the erstwhile state special status in 2019. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Bharatiya Janata Party National President JP Nadda is set to visit Odisha and Chhattisgarh today. During his visit, Nadda will meet BJP MPs, MLAs and party workers at the party headquarters in the states and hold discussions. He will provide guidance on the party's ongoing membership drive across various locations. Ahead of Navratri festival, hundreds of sculptors from the Indian state of West Bengal are busy preparing the idols of Ma Durga. Navratri will be celebrated from 3rd of October to 12th of October 2024. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Sensex Nifty at fresh record high. And US Congress passes stopgap spending bill to avert government shutdown. And in sports, Carlos Alcaraz secures a spot in the season-ending ATP Finals. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khuranan. On to some business news now. Continuing their winning streak for the 6th consecutive trading session, Indian benchmark indices reached new record highs on Thursday, driven by gains in IT and FMCG stocks. At opening bell, Sensex was up by 132 points or 0.2% at 85,302, and the Nifty 50 was up by 37 points or 0.1% at 26,041. Well, Asian stocks bucked the global trend to extend a rally on Thursday, fueled by persistent optimism over China's aggressive stimulus package. The sea of green across equities in Asia came even as Wall Street closed lower overnight, with global stock indexes giving up their gains from earlier in the week. Still, MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan opens new tab, rose more than 1% to an over 2-year high on Thursday. Japan's Nikkei opens new tab surged as 2.4%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index opens new tab similarly advanced 1.5%, while the mainland CSI 300 Blue Chip Index opens new tab reversed early losses to last trade at 0.3% higher. And the US Congress passed a stopgap bill on Wednesday to avert a partial government shutdown next week, despite House of Republicans' revolt against their leadership's failure to achieve new federal spending cuts. The Democratic majority Senate passed the bill by a margin of 78-18 shortly after the House of Representatives approved it. The measure will maintain the government's current level of roughly $1.2 trillion in annual discretionary funding. The bill now heads to President Joe Biden, who plans to sign it before the Tuesday shutdown deadline. Both chambers are set to adjourn this week for a lengthy recess and will not return to Washington until after the 5th of November elections. While you're watching DD India News, our time now for some sports news. In Real Madrid said on Wednesday that the club's forward Kylian Mbape has suffered a muscle injury, casting doubt over his participation in the weekend derby against Atletico Madrid. Mbape was signed from Paris Saint-Germain this year only and has been in fine form this season, scoring 7 goals for Real in 9 matches across all competitions. The 25-year-old was substituted in the 80th minute of the 3-2 home win over Deportivo Alaves in La Liga on Tuesday and gestured to his his thigh while leaving the pitch. Real are second in the La Liga standings on 17 points, one behind Barcelona, who have a game in hand. Real will play second-bottom Getafe later next week on Wednesday. And Carlos Alcaraz secured his place in the season-ending ATP Finals to be held in Turin, joining world number 1 Jannik Sinner and twice champion Alexander Zverev. Alcaraz won the French Open and Wimbledon this year to take bagged the silver medal at the Paris Olympics. The world number 3 from Spain has qualified for the season finale for the third consecutive year and will be aiming to win the trophy for the first time after reaching the semi-finals last year. Sinner qualified in August during his run to the Montreal quarterfinals. Zverev earned his spot after making the last 8 of the US Open. And the All India Chess Federation announced cash rewards for the historic 45th Olympiad winning Indian teams during a felicitation ceremony in New Delhi on Wednesday. AICF President Nitin Narang made the announcement during the event. Each player from the winning teams will be given around $30,000, while the coaches of the men's and women's team, Abhijit Kunte and Srinath Narayanan, will be rewarded with around $18,000 each. The winners were ecstatic with the achievement and believe that this is just the start of India's dominance. And meanwhile, DD India's Abhishek Mahajan had an exclusive conversation with Indian chess grandmaster R. Pragananda, where he talked about his special achievement for India. Listen in.
Chess Olympiad gold medalist R. Pragananda is with us. Welcome, Pragananda. Welcome. Appreciate you giving us your precious time. First of all, how emotional is this victory for you? It's a huge, huge moment for the entire country. How big is this for you?
Yeah, it's definitely big for me and the country as well. Big for chess as well, because it is growing, and this victory will make it grow more.
You scored 21 out of 22 and you win by a huge margin of 4 points. I mean, it has not happened before, and many of them are saying that it may not happen in future also. I mean, was it a magical time?
Yeah, for sure. We didn't really, we wanted to give our best and didn't really think about about the score, about the outcome, and that's why I think we are able to score 21 out of 22.
Grand welcome at the airport. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting, Chief Minister also M.K. Stalin meeting. Are you liking all this?
Yeah, it's good for the game, and good to see that chess is being supported and our achievements are being recognized.
And you think this is the beginning of India's dominance in the world in chess?
Yeah, I think not only the players that are playing right now, but there are also a lot of talents coming up. So it's definitely a very good generation for chess.
4 individual gold medals, 2 team gold medals. Did it take time to sink in?
Yeah. It took time to sink in. Obviously, what we have achieved there is very historical, and we have been trying to win a gold medal in Olympiad for a long time. And we have finally achieved it. So it's a very good feeling.
It was a great celebration also, and it was told in the press conference that it was your idea to celebrate it like that.
Yeah, it's not that I invented it. It's just that I saw the moments of Messi doing it and Rohit Sharma doing it, so I suggested it as an idea, but it was taken forward by Viditana and others, so honestly I didn't think that we would be doing it at the end of the day, but we did manage to do it.
And did it give you goosebumps? I mean, you getting the trophy from none other than Vishwanathan Anand, and national anthem in the background, you holding the flag, Indian flag. Did it give you goosebumps?
Yeah, for sure. It's Anand sir has been inspiring all of us. So getting a trophy from him is it's a very it's a very special moment that can't be expressed in words.
All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Rupakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.